You are on, Counselor.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. So let's call the Public Works and Utilities Committee meeting for Monday, July 27th to order. Can we have a roll call, please? Emily, do you mind doing that?
Chairman Christopher Rivera.
Here.
Councillor Ramon Abeyta.
Here.
Councillor Joanne Behill Coppler.
Here.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Present.
And Councillor Signing Lindell.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Emily. Appreciate it. Next, approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff? Let's start with Emily. Any changes?
There was a red line for item D that was sent out around 3 this afternoon. I'm not sure if you've all received that.
Yeah, I think Councillor Villarreal had to send it out again. Is that correct, Councillor?
That's correct. You all should have received it this morning. But
All right, so I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look at it, but we can talk about that, but thank you. Any other changes, John?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
How about from you, Shannon?
No changes, Chair. Thank you.
I don't know if Jamie's on.
I am on. There's no changes.
Okay. So what are the wishes of the committee with regards to the agenda?
Move to approve.
second.
Motion for approval by Councillor Lindell of the agenda, a second by Councillor Hill Coppler. Could we have a roll call, please? Emily, if you don't mind doing that.
Sure. Chairman Christopher Rivera.
Yes.
Councillor Ramon Abeyta.
Yes.
Councillor Joanne Behill Coppler.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Signy Lindell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thanks, Emily. Next is approval of the consent agenda. Any changes from staff? Anything, John or Shannon?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
None from us, Chair. Thank you.
All right, anything the committee would like to pull? Let's start with Councillor Hill Coppler.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'd like to pull D, E, F, and H.
D, E, F, and
H.
H. All right, Councillor Garcia.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chair. I wanted to pull D as well. But in a question in regards to item B, I know that there was myself and I think maybe another counselor who asked to be a co-sponsor, and it's still not listed as us having as co-sponsors. So I don't know if we need to pull that to have that change made or just connect after the fact.
I think you can just let us know now that you want to be a co-sponsor on that.
Okay, so I do want to be a co-sponsor on item B, as in boy. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lindell, anything you'd like to pull?
Everything's already been pulled for me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Abeyta.
Same. I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, and in addition to what Councillor Hill Coppler pulled, I'd like to pull item G. All right, so as of now, we have items D, E, F, G, and H. Can we have a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion for approval from Councillor Garcia, a second from Councillor Lindell. Can you do the roll call, please, Emily?
Chairman Christopher Rivera.
Yes.
Councillor Ramon Abeyta.
Yes.
Councillor Joanne Behill Coppler.
Yes.
Councillor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Signy Lindell.
Yes.
And motion passes.
Thank you, Emily. Next, approval of the minutes from July 6th. Any changes from staff, Emily or John?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
None for me as well, Mr. Chair.
Anything from Jamie or Shannon?
Nothing from me, Mr. Chair.
No changes, Mr. Chair.
All right, any changes from the committee? All right, what are the wishes of the committee?
I'll move.
Move to approve.
Moval for approval from Councilor Abeyta, I believe it was a second from Councilor Vihil Coppler for the minutes. Could we have a roll call, please, Emily?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Roman Abeyta,
Yes.
Counselor Joanne Beho Coppler,
Yes,
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Signing Lindell,
Yes,
the motion passes.
Thank you, Emily. Next, any public comment, Emily, that's been submitted?
No, Mr. Chair.
Anything on your side, Jamie?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, so that portion is closed. So we're on to the consent agenda. The first thing is item D, as in David, which has been pulled by Councilor Vihil Coppler and also from Councilor Garcia. Councilor Vihil Coppler, you can go first.
okay. I recognize that Counselor Villarreal will be going over some changes, but in general, I pulled this because perhaps you, Chair, Mr. Chair, or Counselor Villarreal can just in a nutshell explain what it is the task force will be doing. What do you hope to accomplish, and then what's the time frame that you
So
have?
thank you, Councilor Vihil Coppler. Let's give Councilor Villarreal a thank you for joining us tonight. Opportunity to talk about the changes that she's made, and then she can answer your questions. Councilor Villarreal, do you mind?
You can also answer those questions too. But
I'll join in as well.
I think it might help because the section that I edited substantially, I guess, not substantially, but I did make the most changes was the duties and responsibilities part of the task force resolution. Is there a way to share my screen? I don't know if Joe needs to give me approval or I can just.
Joe, are you able to give Councilor Villarreal approval to share her screen?
And I think that would just help versus you all trying to open what I sent you and going back and forth. The document I sent you is a red line. It's the red line of the original, which was in your packet. And because of the time frame, my changes were not given to you all. Is there a way to share the screen now? It says host disabled. I'm not able to share right now.
Counselor Villarreal?
Yes.
Did yours came across just as a document? It doesn't have any red lines or changes. Was that intended?
No, what it is, and Councilor Rivera and I were talking about it. If you're opening it up on an iPad, you have to actually open it in a Word document in order to see the track changes to the document. Otherwise, it looks like you're opening something that is the original version. So we had talked about this earlier, and that's why I wanted to share my screen because you won't see them.
I do have an iPad. Bummer.
Yeah, there's a way to do it.
It's a Word document, but it's not opening it redlining.
There's also a way, when you open it into Word, you have to actually change the view so that all markups are being shown. But again, that might take more time. And it might be better if Joe just lets me share.
Yeah, I just got a hold of Joe and asked him if he
You're
could
good to go.
let you. There you go. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
Mr. Chair,
Counselor Garcia?
I just turned the Word document into a PDF, which has the red lines incorporated into it. So that might help those that on an iPad. So I'll send it to all committee members now.
Oh,
That would
thanks.
be great, Counselor. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
All right, Counselor Villarreal, why don't you go over your changes and then we'll go from there.
Well, right now, it says I'm sharing my screen, but I don't think you're seeing it, are you?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I don't see it on my screen. Okay, so let me start from the beginning. The section about where we're referencing current community programs, if someone were not to be part of the city, they wouldn't know what they are. So I spelled them out. Instead of just saying MIHO, I spelled out mobile integrated health. I think it's office, not operation. Thrive, what it was formerly known as, and then what Connect is with a footnote, just so people know what those are. And most of those changes that you see here are just more language enhancements, if you will. Just saying that that we're looking at cross-departmental community service and more appropriate and effective types of responsiveness to various kinds of calls or help for assistance. And if you go on to the next page and scroll down to now therefore be it resolved by the governing body. Ignore my question. I was just trying to figure out if that language was repetitive. But if you go to section 3, duties and responsibilities, I added in that and edited because really, to me, a lot of some of the priorities that we would decide on tackling would come from the task. Obviously, we have some ideas of things that we want to look at. Hey, Mr. Chair, can you mute yourself? I just get a lot of feedback. Thank you. And so if you look at A, I added in the full name, Santa Fe Police Department, that we would assess the Santa Fe Police Department policies, procedures, and practices with attention to data-informed research. Some aspects may be assessed depending on the task force identified priorities, but not limited to our examining the police department's use of force policies, professional standards and ethics. I put just officer and department trainings because I don't know if we're going to be able to tackle state police academy trainings per se. Equipment and weapons, staffing and workloads. I didn't think pay level would be part of this conversation. It's not really in our purview for a task force to decide that. And
Mr. Chair, can I jump in just real quick right here while you're on here?
Sure.
If you
Go
look
ahead,
at line
Counselor.
21 and 22, when you just said you took out the State Police Academy, I think it would be important to leave in after attending the State Police Academy, because I think it's important to know what kind of training they get after the academy.
Right, that's why I put it generally as trainings, officer and department trainings. So once they're an officer, then that's at what point I see us looking at some of the trainings that are provided for staff.
Okay, I just saw it as a good point of beginning. And, you know, to be more clear that the training, what training do they get right after that? Sometimes I think the reports we get are too generic.
Right,
But,
so
okay.
after attending the state police academy, well, there's probably a few things that I personally would like to know, and trainings, as you heard from my comments during budget hearings, is that I also want to know about implicit bias anti-racism trainings, and that's not necessarily part of the next phase of after you attend the police academy. So I generalized it to trainings, and however you think makes more sense. I just want to make sure that we're capturing all aspects of training. Any other questions on that? or clarification?
Counselor Vihel Coppler, anything else?
Not from this, thank you.
Go ahead, Counselor Villarreal.
Okay, so if we go into the next page, page 3. Assess ways that for B, actually a lot of these are just language adjustments. It's not changing what we had initially said. So I'll go down to E on line 9. It says explore types of calls for service that could be better handled or responded to by human service or social science field professionals. And that's essentially what we were talking about with community services, because folks that are in social science fields are social workers and counselors and such. So that was the only language I could think of that would make it more broad, thinking beyond human service work. And if we go to membership, what I changed or added was on line 20, we said two of the members shall be city councilors and 9 shall be members of the general public with experience or knowledge in community health, public safety, restorative justice, and or social or racial justice community work. And I added that because I don't think we should assume that everybody comes with a background of community health and public safety, that we need community members that do social justice work on a broad range, in a broad range. And I mean, if there are other sections and expertise we want to add in there, I just don't want us to disregard people that are community members that are active, but don't necessarily have degrees in public health or have done or have backgrounds in public safety. So that was the language I added there. And then if we move on, this is kind of up for negotiation, but that we would conduct the duration of these meetings, that we would conduct at least twice per month. You know, and when we first envisioned this, we thought we'd meet weekly. I don't know how realistic that is, but I think that at least we should be meeting twice a month. Because to answer your question, Counselor Vihel Coppler, the idea was to try to finish this work in 3 months, knowing that if it goes beyond that we could extend it through the governing body. But again, the time frame was kind of 3 to 6 months. And so that to me would be open for discussion, but those are all the changes that I've suggested.
Thank you, Counselor Villarreal. Counselor Vihel Coppler, you still have the floor.
Thank you. So this would start after approval by the governing body, like right away? Is that what you envision? Oh, well, actually the appointments need to be made.
Right. The way I envision this, I think my colleague knows, I wasn't thrilled that we were, in my opinion, kind of rushing this to get it on the agenda for Wednesday. And that's why it was introduced at a budget hearing, but that's why I'm trying to get these changes in before we actually meet on Wednesday. However, I do think that we should take the time to make sure that people know that the ability to serve on this task force is available, and we haven't done any public outreach or just introduction other than what the paper wrote, but I don't think as many people from the general public know about this. So I see it as having an opportunity for people to apply or have send in letters of interest and resumes after we approve this, which I want us to give us ample time for people to know about this and that there's this option or an ability to serve and be considered.
So are you thinking like by the end of August, it would be ready to go?
That's my hope. I think about a month, yeah. Because we'd have to have people submit resumes and letters of interest, and then we'd have to go through them and vet and pick the number that nine individuals.
And then the mayor would have to submit those names to the governing body, and the governing body would have to approve.
So Councilor Rivera, do you estimate that those approvals will be at the end of August at that meeting?
I think that's probably fair. Yeah, I think Again, like Councilor Villarreal said, there's not a whole lot of people that know about it yet. There are some, and we have been getting resumes submitted, but we need to do some more outreach. So I think the end of August is probably fair.
And then do you expect that your work will be completed by the end of December? That's 4 months or sooner?
I think we're looking at least 6 months to be able to go through what we need to. Meeting twice a month, I think, is realistic, and I think we could probably get some good work done in 6 months. I think there's some flexibility in there to extend it if we need to, or shorten it if we don't need to go that long. So
On that point, maybe we should change this to 6, where it says no more than 3 months. To change it to 6 so that we don't have to, if it takes longer, we don't have to go back to the governing body as quickly.
yeah, that's a good point. I think 3 months is too short, personally, but
And,
I mean-
oh, there it is. It's at the end, right?
Yeah.
yes.
Do you see me changing the document?
Yeah, you put 6 though, and then you put 3
Oh, my bad.
after it.
Thanks.
Okay, and then is this task force gonna delve into like police department issues? Like internal investigations and how those should be handled? I'm not sure where, I mean, if that's even the purpose of this task force, so I'm not quite clear about the task force overall. That's why I asked these questions. And the other part of it is like, recruitment, how they recruit, what the internal operations stand for. I know there was an email maybe by one of the counselors asking for their operations procedures to be posted on the internet. Did I dream that? Or does somebody else know about that?
I believe that was asked for, and I don't think it's a problem. I think the committee will look at all that, and I think the committee itself, made up of the community, will decide really what they want to delve into, and if they want to try to look into internal affairs, again, not into every specific case that's happening, but maybe how we handle internal affairs moving forward. That's something that the committee may decide to look at in the short amount of time that we're meeting. And then I'm sure there's a lot of legalities behind it. So, exploring what we really can and can't do, I think, may be something that the committee looks at.
Well, one of the things and why I bring it up is because I've had some officers complain that it just takes so long to get decisions on internal affairs, and everything is sent to internal affairs. And I don't know if it's on purpose, because if an officer is under, if an internal affairs investigation hasn't concluded and a decision made, there's no police department in the state that will take their application if they have an open internal affairs investigation. And sometimes those investigations go on for 2 or 3 years. So that's something that I think would be not only external, how these public safety issues affect the public, but how do these items affect the internal organization? Because we do lose officers, and we've got an issue with retention. So I think the more we can delve into that to keep our officers, maybe through this committee as part of something that they look at, it might be very helpful.
No, point taken, and we can definitely discuss it as a committee, and if we're within our legal rights to do so, and everything looks like we can discuss it, then definitely something we can bring up.
Yeah, and my comment doesn't have anything to do with the subject matter, just the timing, because they're put aside and they just don't, that's not a priority, they get on into other things, and so those investigations just kind of stay there. So, all right, thank you.
Good point. Actually, I think that's a good point that we could add to the next, maybe as another amendment. I don't know what it would look like, because I've also heard of people interested about internal affairs investigations and if they should even occur within the police department versus a separate entity. So we can add it now, or if you want to propose something.
I think we should leave it up to the committee, because there may be some legal aspects as to whether we can make any changes, or I'm not sure about the whole internal affairs protocols or how that goes. So there may be some legal issues around it. So maybe we should leave it up to the committee, and then we can have some discussion with the city attorney's office and decide how we want to move forward. But if we put it into the document itself, then it assures that we have to talk about it, but then it makes it kind of questionable as whether we can make any changes or not. Does that make any sense?
Well, I'm kind of the mindset that even if we put certain aspects that we want to be considered, it may change because the task force wants to look at other aspects versus the ones we listed on this resolution.
Right.
That's why I was trying to kind of make it more broad, because we don't necessarily, we have ideas of things that we've heard from community members about things, and also nationally what's shifting in terms of looking at community policing and public safety in a different way. And some of these came up in that regard, but I kind of feel like there may be some other pieces that we would look at, and it may not be necessarily what's listed here. So that's why I added in, depending on the task force identified priorities.
There's a place, I consider this to be internal operations and not even having to use the word internal affairs. And if you look at page 2, item, starting with line 18 under A, assess Santa Fe Police Department, you could say operations, procedures, policies, and practices. Just turn those around, turn those words around. That's my suggestion for an amendment.
Like this?
If you want to make a friendly amendment. Operations, internal operations.
Internal operations.
And then procedures, and then policies. Well, practices would be last.
Policies and practices.
No, policies, internal operations, procedures, you need to get rid of policies up after.
It's erased.
Scratched it, okay. Procedures and policies, comma after procedures, policies and practices.
Do we even need practices in here if we're talking about?
No, I guess you really don't. Well, yeah, you do. That's just practices are just like, how do people do things without regard to policies and procedures?
Wouldn't it be policies and procedures?
Well, the reason I say operations, procedures and policies is because, well, yeah, you could do it any way you want. I think it's the same. You could, whatever's easier.
Okay,
Policies,
so
procedures.
internal operations, policies and procedures and practices.
Policies, procedures, and practices. So you
There we
need to take the and out.
There you go. Okay. Any other wordsmithing or questions you have that?
Councilor Vihel Coppler.
I think thank you, Mr. Chair. I have all my questions answered.
Okay, Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of my questions was in regards to the time frame as well, because I didn't know if 3 months was going to be sufficient, and I'm glad that it's getting extended to 6 months on the meeting on twice a month, bi-monthly basis, which I think, given the amount of work ahead of this task force, it's going to need that much time, if not more. One question I did have that I don't necessarily see in the document is regarding deliverables. Are we going to include the task force be charged with making recommendations? And if so, who are they going to make them to? Is it going to be the governing body or to the mayor? And should we include that in this resolution? Because
So
Go ahead,
my
Mr. Chair.
opinion is that any changes that are recommended by the task force come to the governing body, but if we need to spell it out, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, because right now it just says they're going to assess and analyze with no purpose besides that. And I think if we do want to take all that research that the task force is going to put in front of them, there should be that final deliverable with the recommendations. And so I don't know if that needs to be added on after item G, make it an item H.
So we can do that, and just so you know, some of the deliverables we may meet twice in the first month and come up with deliverables as to the maybe policies and procedures on how they deal with use of force issues. So they
Right.
may come throughout the entire process. I'd hate to wait till the end to make changes, but just so you know, you're aware of that.
No, I completely agree. And I think just having it written out who the recommendations be made to, I'd hate to get in a situation where the recommendations are made to the mayor when the governing body feels they should have the recommendations made to them, or vice versa. So I think just having it clearly written out who they go to, and it doesn't necessarily have to have a time frame, as you mentioned, as they come up with these recommendations, they get sent to the appropriate body.
All right. Do you have a recommended language for Councilor Villarreal?
I mean, something like, as recommendations by the task force are made, they should be submitted to the governing body. Something like that. I mean, maybe Jesse can help us with the wordsmithing of that.
Well, here's the other piece to that. Like, some of the recommendations that will be made might be able to be completed, not because I guess what I'm saying is there may be recommendations that can be adjusted and the policies and procedures are changed internally, and it doesn't have to go to the governing body. And then there's some bigger pieces that probably would go to the governing body. So we do need to add some language in though about it, because if there are recommendations, we're not just here to provide ideas, that we actually have recommendations, and where do they go to actually get considered and implemented. So
I agree. And I think that's where finding that sweet spot of ensuring that the task force understands that at the end of the day, they're going to assess and analyze, but recommendations are kind of what's being asked of this body, of the task force.
So that one seems a little bit more technical maybe than we can do right now. So are you okay, Councilor Garcia, to work with Jesse or someone in the attorney's office to come up with the language that you desire?
Sure, absolutely.
And I agree with you. I think, it should be said there, but we should have some flexibility as well, like Councilor Villarreal said.
Right. No, I agree.
Good.
Okay. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else? Councilor Vihil Copper.
On that point, I could chime in on some suggested language for item H right now. That's maybe I could stab at.
Let's allow Councilor Garcia to work with the attorney's office or Jesse to kind of come up with that language, if you don't mind. And Because I think it may be a little more difficult than we're anticipating.
Maybe the two of you can put something together.
Is this
Right.
going to be council on Wednesday? Oh,
Yes, yeah.
okay.
And Mr. Chair, Counselor Vihel Coppler, I'm more than happy to connect with you. And we can try to hash this out and get something sent over to legal to see if we can get it all ready by Wednesday.
As long as, if you can make sure when you talk about recommendations, it's not just every single thing has to go through the governing body. that
right.
there's Policies and procedures, blah, blah, blah. Okay,
That's
thank
why
you.
it wouldn't have a deadline. That's what was my suggestion.
Yeah,
And I think in that, I think it's important that if the department can make administrative changes without going back to the governing body, that's a great thing. But I think the governing body should still be aware of the work that the task force is doing. So
Right.
that's going to be the wordsmithing part of it. So I'm glad you guys are taking that on. So thank you. Anything else, Councilor Garcia?
That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right. So what are the wishes of the committee with the recommended changes from Councilor Villarreal, and then also the work that Councilor Garcia and Councilor Viejo Coppler are going to do?
Move to approve.
Second.
So a motion for approval from Councilor Lindell, a second from Councilor Garcia. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Councilor Viejo Coppler.
I think I'd be more comfortable with move to approve with the amendments, with Councilor Villarreal's amendments.
Is that okay, Councilor Lindell?
Yeah, that's fine.
Councilor Garcia, you okay with that as a second?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. So we have a motion to approve as amended by Councilor Villarreal. No further discussion. Could we have a roll call, please, Emily?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Romana Abeyta,
Yes.
Councilor Joanne Vihel Coppler,
Yes?
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Signe Lindell.
Yes,
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you all for the discussion on that.
thank
We're
you,
on
everybody.
item E. It's too long to read, but it's an ordinance relating to creating efficiencies and effectiveness in eliminating silos by reorganizing certain city departments. Councilor Vihel Coppler, you pull this.
I'm muting myself, sorry. Okay, thank you. I'm pulling this primarily for the general public who might be watching this on YouTube. Just to explain that there will be a public hearing on this. We have received, at least I know I have received many comments about the reorganization. There's many people that want to weigh in on this. And so I pull it just to indicate to them that we're not approving the reorganization with this. We are approving the public hearing.
Yes.
And the time to weigh in is any time between now and, let's see, when is the public hearing?
August 29th.
Okay, so I just encourage the public who has any comments, pro or con, to get their comments ready and in the timeliness that's required for presenting public comment. And then, of course, to provide information on when the public hearing will be. So August 29th, right? So that's why I pulled it, just so the general public can understand.
All right.
Thank
And, if there is general public watching this, I would remind them that there's a procedure for getting your public comment into the record, which is presented along with the agenda on the city's webpage. So I believe you have to do it 24 hours in advance. You have to, whether you want to make public comment or submit it in writing, you have to do it well in advance, and that's published on the agenda with the city meetings. So please look at that and see what the process is.
And Mr. Chair, I think, they should know they can present in Zoom person, as well as submit written comments. I know you said that, but I just want to reiterate that. And also, I lost my other point, but anyway, thank you for that.
And I don't know if so I'm getting some chat messages that says it's August 26th. However, item E on the agenda says public hearing on August 29th. So can somebody confirm whether it's the 26th or the 29th? I don't know if I'm not sure.
Mr. Chair, the 26th is a Wednesday and the 29th is a Saturday. So I'm guessing it is the 26th.
All right, then we'll have to change the notice, which on the agenda I'm looking at says public hearing on August 29th. So Emily, if you can make a note to Jesse or the city attorney's office that needs to be fixed.
Okay, I will.
Thank you. All right, any other Councilor Vihel Coppler, anything else?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
All right, what are the wishes of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second,
Motion for approval from Councilor Garcia, second from Councilor Lindell. Any further discussion? All right, Emily, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Roman Abeyta,
Yes.
Councilor Joanne Vihel Coppler,
Yes,
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Signe Lindell.
yes,
The motion passes.
Thank you, Emily. We're on item F, which is consideration of approval of a resolution adopting the City of Santa Fe fiscal year 2021 operating budget and organizational chart. Councilwoman Vihel Coppler, you pull this one as well.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the first part of it is, it says annual operating budget and organizational chart, and there is no organizational chart provided. But the bigger part of this is, we're still in budget hearings, and I'm not so sure that it's the timeliness of this is right. I mean, I don't, there are some decisions that still have yet to be made, and so I will just say that I guess rather than voting no, well, that or abstain, but the part about the organizational chart bothers me because I don't know what that means. Does that mean we're approving? Well, I know we have to get based on the discussion before, we have to get the reorganization approved, but I don't know what this organizational chart means. Maybe Councilor Abeyta can address that.
Councilor Abeyta, you want to take a stab at that?
I agree with the Councilwoman Vihel Coppler. I don't know why the organizational chart is in there or why they're referring to that. So I would think that and I think the reason the caption is on is so that you have the two committees that look at something before it goes to governing body. So I think whether we regardless of what we do, the budget's going to be heard on Wednesday anyways, but maybe we can approve it with the amendment that it doesn't include the organizational chart.
Is that okay, Councilor Vihel Coppler?
Well, yes, and I'd like you to also address, Councilor Abeyta, the fact that we haven't finished the Finance Committee budget hearings.
Yeah, the only one we don't have done is the utilities department budget. All the others have been concluded with a recommendation for approval. So like I said, I think this was in hopes that the budget hearings would have been done maybe even by last week. because Monday was, when this was scheduled, Monday was just a carryover day. So I think they were just trying to get ahead of it and making sure Public Works got to act on the resolution itself. So.
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, I would be comfortable just passing it without a recommendation then. I mean, I could go for that.
I think that would be fine since the finance committee still has some work to do and the org chart still hasn't been adopted yet. So I would be fine with that.
Yeah, I agree with Councilwoman Vihil Coppler.
Would you like to make a motion, Councilor Vihil Coppler?
Well, I'll move that we, I don't know what the language, move this on to the city council without a recommendation and with removing the caption organizational chart.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, so would that mean on page 2 of the resolution, lines 3 and 4 would be stricken? Be it further resolved that the governing body also hereby approves and adopts the organizational chart included as an amendment to the fiscal year 2021 budget. So those 2 lines be stricken.
So I think that's still something that we'll decide on Wednesday night. As far as this committee goes, we're just saying that we're moving it forward because the budget hasn't been finally approved yet or hasn't gone through the finance committee yet. And the org chart hasn't been vetted yet either. So, but
Okay.
I think that language is still important to the resolution itself.
Okay, just for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Emily, do you mind doing the roll call again, please?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Roman Abeyta,
Yes.
Councilor Joanne Vihil Coppler,
Yes,
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes,
Councilor Signe Lindell.
Yes,
Motion passes.
Thank you, Emily. We're on to item G, which is an item that I pulled. And it's to change the start time of afternoon sessions of governing body meetings to 4 and evening sessions to 6, beginning August 12th. The reason I pulled it is historically, we used to have meetings at 4 o'clock. We never had evening sessions at 6. They always started at 7, but the afternoon did start at 4. And I think it was moved because once you allow more time, there's usually more discussion and usually more things thrown into the agenda. So it may start out going really well, and then in the end, we may be in the same situation that we're currently at. And then the other thing with moving meetings up to 6 o'clock, the people that I represent typically have full-time jobs. Some of them are single parents. A lot of them commute from Los Alamos. So by the time they get home, it's 6 o'clock. Then they have to think about dinner, think about children, think about other things. And that may be pushing it a little bit from moving it up from 7 to 6. So that's my concern. For me personally, it doesn't matter. I have the flexibility to do either. And again, if we want to try it, that's fine. But that is my concern, moving it up from 7 to 6 o'clock. So I'll leave it at that. I see Councilor Lindell's hand up. Councilor Lindell, you have a question?
thank you, Chair. I'm going to support this. It's got a time frame on it through the end of the year. You make me chuckle a little bit, Chair, that you give counselors more time to talk, they'll talk more. It'll allow us a chance to show some self-discipline and some self-awareness, come come prepared and maybe talk less and say more. So I'm willing to give it a try. And if it doesn't work, we can it has an end time on it. We can throw the towel in and go back to the way it's been. But I think it'll be interesting if we can show some self-awareness and try to get through these meetings in a more expedient manner. So those are my thoughts on it. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councilor Villarreal.
Thank you, Councilor Lindell. I was trying to be a little nicer than saying.
I wasn't nice.
I was trying. Councilor
You were
Garcia,
nice.
you
You were
have your
nice.
hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So being the freshman counselor on the block, I'll ask this question. Just because I in my short tenure, I've noticed that our council agendas are just getting more saturated and more saturated and more saturated. And if we look at, for example, our meeting agenda on Wednesday, if I was a guessing person, we're going to probably finish up Wednesday's meeting about 1 o'clock in the morning if we're lucky. And so has it ever been proposed in the past where we limit the number of agenda items on a meeting, and should something be critical where we do need to have a second meeting be heard? Because I think with such condensed meetings, and I mentioned this when Councilor Riel brought this up, that once we get to that 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock hour, we're not developing quality policy. We're getting tired, we're getting hungry, we're getting grumpy. And I think at that point, we just want to kind of get it on with and get through the meeting, which to me doesn't lead to quality policy. And so I guess my question to the experienced counselors in the committee, has there ever been a proposal to limit the amount of agenda items on a council meeting?
I'll start with that and just say, to my knowledge, no. It's always up to the chair or to the mayor in the case of the governing body to set the agenda, either limit or add items as needed. So, but I don't think there's ever been a policy or an ordinance or resolution that limits the amount of agenda items.
Okay. I mean,
Councilor Lindell, are you aware of anything?
Totally agree with you, Chair.
okay. Councilor Villarreal, I see her waving her.
She's not on my screen. Councilor Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We haven't had language in that way, but I think we have never adjusted to how COVID has affected our meetings and being virtual, and how long things take, having to do roll call. I mean, all those things add up. And to me, I think it's short-sighted to think we're going to continue functioning the same way that we did in-person meetings. And we've never adjusted that. And, there's been times that when we were in-person meetings, we'd go very close to that, like going way over the time. But for the most part, we'd keep that. We were better about it, I think, in the past few years. I just think that now with COVID and being virtual, it's not the same. Like, we shouldn't expect to have the same kind of level of ability to be in virtual meetings. It's very different than being in person. So I don't know if there's language for that aspect, but I also want to mention that Councilor Carmichael Dominguez looked at ways that we could shorten even the time period that people would speak. And it wasn't because he was trying to censor people, but it actually says in Robert's rules of time frame limits. Do you guys remember that, my colleagues? That actually in the Robert's rules, there's a time limit for speaking for governing body elected officials. So we haven't brought that up, but it is part of the it is part of the Roberts rules anyway. And when Counselor Carmichael Dominguez brought it up, people thought he was trying to limit the number or the amount of time people spoke, but he was just trying to reinforce what had already been stated in Robert's rules.
I think the way we have it now has to deal a lot with respect towards one another and really giving each other the amount of time that we need to speak. And also, you know, when you get to the 11:30 midnight hour and you have a group of people that have been waiting 4 or 5 hours to speak, it's hard to tell them, sorry, you know, you've been waiting that long, but we're gonna move you to the next meeting. So that becomes difficult. So I'm not sure that part really works. So, you know, but I'm open to, again, trying different things. I will try this. I just do have some concerns about it. Council, who was it? Counselor, was it Vihil Copper that had the floor?
I didn't have the floor, but I have a question.
Okay, Counselor Garcia, did you have any other questions?
No, that was it. It just kind of struck me that, you know, I think to the point that Councilor Villarreal had brought up, or I think it was you, Mr. Chair, that, you know, it's becoming more and more packed. And I think not only is it unfair to the workers that are presenting this language in front of us, but especially when we get to public hearings and we're having public hearings at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. I understand that that's just business, but we can plan business better to where we can, when we do have public hearings, we put forth in front of us something that is not gonna, we know that's like the budget, where we're gonna debate the budget for a time period, and then we have other public hearings after the fact. So I think we just need to strategically figure out how we can develop these agendas better. And if that might be limiting the amount of agenda items, and once it hits a certain threshold, then we've got to plan for the backup meeting. And that's where we just plan in advance that when we have the backup second council meeting, just because there's so much work to be done. So that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Vihil Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder, since we're going to be meeting at 6, and then with the discussion with Councilor Lindell and yourself, Mr. Chair, did we think about moving the cutoff date to 10:30? In anticipation that the more time you have, the more you take? I'm serious. Did anybody discuss that, Councilor Villarreal?
No, but I like it. Well, where would you put that? So what are you suggesting?
Well, I don't know if there's an appetite for it, but I think, you know, if we're trying things, we might want to try it, and then maybe that'll speed up. But I mean, I'd be interested in that. That way we know.
So you're saying a time to end?
Yeah, I know there's another, either an ordinance or a resolution that we have for cutting off at 11:30. And I don't know if it would go there, but we could, if we're trying things, maybe we could slip that in here just for a try. That's just a suggestion to keep the meetings in line. I mean, if we know we're gonna have to quit, sometimes we zip the lip a bit, you know? I don't know.
So maybe we can do something like 10:30 and then with a hard cutoff of midnight. And because if we go to midnight, anything after midnight, we're just not functioning. I've been in those meetings and they're rough. So, you know, I'd be open to, you know, cutting it off at 10:30 with a hard cutoff of midnight, regardless.
I wouldn't go to midnight, Mr. Chair, because that's even worse, because we have 11:30 now. I mean, we suspend the rules at the time of that hour, but I would say 10:30 with the cutoff at 11. I don't know. Well, I think we should try something, is all I'm saying. And then the other item I wanted to bring up is I agree with the sentiment that maybe we're not all fresh and we're deciding appeals in our judicial roles. We're listening to the public on public hearings. And then we go into executive session before all this. And I would like to change the order of that. Because out of respect for the public, where you go ahead with the public hearings and hopefully those get done in the 4 o'clock session, but we don't always get that done. And then we go to, well, no, we have public hearings in the evening. So then we go to appeals, then we go into executive session, because then we're not leaving the public waiting. But we leave the public waiting a long time for executive sessions. So that's just a suggestion with regard to Councilor Garcia's suggestion about shortening the agenda and the public waiting and us not making decisions. We can't make decisions in executive session anyway, so we might be better serving the public by hearing their items first.
Yeah. And how the agenda is lined, I think is up to the mayor. I think he can move it around any way he wants. So if he wanted to put executive session at the end of the night, I think that's within his purview to do so. We've moved things around on this committee so that I heard from the public that they wanted to speak before we actually voted on items. So they have that ability to do so now at the beginning of the meeting. So
Yeah.
Again, the chair or the mayor, I think, can adjust the agenda any way they want.
Or we could make motions when we approve the agenda as well.
Yeah.
So, back to my point about the cutoff time. Is there any appetite for suggesting a trial of a cutoff time, a new cutoff time in this resolution? If there's not, I'll just go away.
I would say let's just start with this and see how it goes after, through December, and then decide from there how we want to make further changes or if we want to go back. That would be my recommendation.
You must be a night owl, Mr. Chair.
Any
Okay,
other thoughts or ideas? All right, I pull this, so I'll move for approval.
Second.
So I move for approval, a second by Councilor Garcia. Any further discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, Emily?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Roman Abeyta,
Yes.
Councilor Joanne Beho-Koppler,
yes,
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Sidney Lindell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Emily. Let's go on to item H. A resolution permitting city departments to seek retroactive approval of contracts for fiscal year 2021. Councilor Beho-Koppler, you pull this.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I just am wanting an explanation in real life of what this is addressing. And I don't know if there's a co-sponsor. I don't see anybody on here.
This is being presented by the city attorney's office, but I don't see anyone from the attorney's office on.
Marco Martinez.
Oh, there he is. Yeah, he's there. Okay. Marcos, do you want to comment on that?
He's not a panelist.
I just
Joe,
let
are
him
you-
in. I just let him in.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Marcos, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. And see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. And Counselor, thank you, Counselor Beho-Koppler, for the question. The impetus behind this resolution was a lot of consternation on the part of the departments who've been unable to renew numerous contracts. And the reason that they can't renew them or amend them for term is because they do not know what their budgets will be. And so in the absence of that knowledge, they don't know whether they can amend the contract or not. And initially, the purchasing manual and also the procurement regulations contemplated the ability to approve a contract that had already expired for up to 30 days beyond the end of the term. And we thought, myself and Fran Dunaway, the Chief Procurement Officer, thought that the 30-day window would be enough for the departments to figure out what their budgets would be. Unfortunately, it hasn't been enough time, and we're still hearing a lot of complaints from the departments about their inability to plan and know if these contracts can continue or not. And this is compounded by the fact that a lot of the contracts that need term renewals were procured via a competitive process, so an RFP or a bid process. And if they expire and then the departments find out what their budgets will be, the departments would have to go out for RFP or do bids again, further delaying the ability of the departments to have continuity of service. So I spoke to the city attorney, procurement, the chief procurement officer, and the city manager about this issue. And we proposed this resolution that would allow, give basically a longer grace period of time that would allow the departments to extend contracts that would otherwise expire for up to 90 days during the pendency of this COVID emergency. And that in a nutshell is really the genesis of this. It's a lot of concern on the part of many departments with many contracts.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. So I just want to be clear that this is specifically for contracts that have previously been approved, and maybe some of those that have year-to-year renewals, but not for new contracts.
That's correct.
Okay, and is there language that makes that distinction in here?
I would just point you to, I guess the first be it resolved clause on the second page, and this is on line 14 through 17, states that the governing body of the city of Santa Fe, that departments may bring contracts to be amended or extended for up to 90 days after the end of the contract term if the renewal has been delayed by the COVID pandemic. So we don't want people just who've forgotten their contracts to just use this as a get out of jail free card. There should be some connection, but it's only for amendments or extensions, renewals, basically.
Thank you for that. And does this permission, should it be approved, does it expire anytime, or is this going to be the way it is forever?
Well, I think that 90 days is a long time to allow an expired contract. So I'd rather not have this continue. My recommendation would be not to have this continue longer than that, because if there's just no end to when the departments are going to know what their budgets will be, I think the city's got larger problems, and maybe those contracts should be terminated. So I'm hoping that the 90 days will be the last of this sort of extended period.
Okay, and so then more specifically, does this whole thing kind of go away because it refers to the second be it resolved, oh no, the first be it resolved for fiscal year 2021. So after 2021, am I interpreting this correctly, that then this option no longer applies?
That's correct. We're hoping that this is there'll be some solution to the COVID outbreak by fiscal year 2022. So yes, this is just for this extraordinary year.
So this would expire in June 30th of 2021.
No, this extends. So this is for contracts that would expire in the fiscal year, at the end of the fiscal year 20, Normally, they would have had up to 30 days past the end of the fiscal year. So that would take you from instead of June 30th to July 30th, or the end of July. Now we want to be able to approve contracts that would have otherwise expired up to 3 months after the end of the fiscal year 20. So that would be 90 days after June 30th. So it's in September.
This year, September?
Yes, just September of 2020.
Okay, so I'm just getting stuck on that. Line 17 has been delayed by the COVID pandemic for fiscal year 2021, which ends, am I right? It ends next year, June 30th?
Yes, you're
But you're
correct.
saying this wouldn't last that long.
Well,
I guess.
that's correct. The ability to extend the term only goes until September 2020. These were for contracts that would have otherwise expired in June of 2020. And again, the departments have been scrambling for what to do. What is their budget going to be? I'm hoping that all the departments will know what their budgets will be and be able to knowingly amend or extend those contracts by the end of September. So it's really just for this weird transition between fiscal year 20 and 21.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Any other questions? All right, what's the wishes of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion for approval by Councilor Abeyta, second by Councilwoman Vihel Coppler. Any further discussion? Emily, can we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Christopher Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Ramon Abeyta,
Yes.
Councilor Joanne Vihel Coppler,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Sidney Lindell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next we're on matters from staff. Anything, John?
I don't have anything, Mr. Chair.
Anything from you, Emily?
No, Mr. Chair.
Anything from your side, Shannon?
Nothing, Mr. Chair, for me.
All right, Jamie?
Nothing for me, Mr. Chair.
All right, matters from the committee? See none. Matters from the chair. I just wanted to, we were pretty hard on wastewater during all the issues they had with delivery of effluent to the golf courses, and knock on wood, I haven't had or heard of any problems. So Shannon, just wanted to give them the props for getting things squared away as much as possible and really not having any issues as of late. So if you can extend that thank you to them, I would appreciate it.
Will do.
Thank you. With that, our next, go ahead.
Sorry, there were a few introductions that Mr. Jeff Norris sent out later today.
That's right. Councilor Lindell, one of them was yours. Do you want to introduce it?
Chair, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I'm doing a little double duty here at home.
Okay, let me see if I
I
can
have it
pull
in
it
front
up.
of me. I could read it in. For
Would you do that for me, Councilor Vihel Coppler?
Sure. Okay. Sponsored by Councilor Lindell, an ordinance amending section 23-7.4 relating to golf rates at the MRC to establish out-of-state rates. This will be presented at the council meeting on 7/29.
All right, and then there's one by the mayor that I'll read in, a resolution extending the state of emergency is proclaimed by the mayor on July 27th, 2020 by 60 days. And I believe those are the only two introductions that we had. Is that correct, Mr. Norris?
Mr. Chair, I believe that's all we had.
Okay, I think so too. Thank you for yes, Councilor
I
Vio
would
Coppola.
like to co-sponsor Counselor Lindell's ordinance.
All right. All right, thank you. Thank you, Emily, for keeping me on task. I appreciate it. With the introductions, our next meeting is Monday, August 10th, 2020. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Yes. I'm doing it right now.